Hey, Mo Hashem here with Flat Fee Landlord, Houston, Texas. Want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July coming up. If you've already enjoyed the weekend, good for you. If you're going to be celebrating tomorrow, want to wish you a safe and happy 4th of July. That said, this time of year we do get a common theme in terms of complaints when it comes to or concerns when it comes to landlords. So today I want to address something that comes up around this time of the year, which is noise complaints and breaking HOA violations, deed restraints when it comes to setting off fireworks and things of that nature. So it is, like I said, something common that comes up around this time of year. Summer, there's a lot of parties going on, and you do get complaints from neighbors, HOA violations, and so forth. So as a landlord, I want to tell you a few things that you can do to either help you in this situation or maybe just answer some questions you may have if you do run into that and what you're supposed to do. So first and foremost, before you even get into renting out a property, some common theme that I always come into is going to be the lease agreement, okay? A lot of the problems that you're gonna have, or basically potential answers to any problems that can arise, is gonna be in your lease agreement, okay? So if you have a really good lease agreement between yourself and the tenant, that's going to answer a lot of the questions that you have. So most of your standard and basic leases that you have out there today have a clause in there that say that the tenant is bound by all the rules of the HOA or condo association that the property is located in. So as an owner, obviously, since you're the property owner, if there are any issues that come up with the HOA in terms of violations or anything that breaks basically any of the deed restrictions that are in that property, you as the owner are held liable. However, what you can do as an owner is then pass some of that liability onto the tenant. So if an issue does come up from an HOA, you get a complaint, or if you get a violation notice, you can then pass that on to the tenant. Again, ultimately, as the homeowner, you're going to be held responsible. But if the tenant wants to stay in that lease and they want to take advantage of renting it and they don't want to get hit with any fines, then you can go ahead and pass that on to the tenant and make sure that they are also held into whatever laws or bylaws that the HOA has come across, they're also held liable for. Another thing that you might want to do is when it comes to noise complaints from neighbors, you almost kind of want to stay away from that a little bit. Any noise complaints that come up between neighbors should really be handled between neighbors, okay? So if a neighbor has an issue with your tenant being too loud, what I typically recommend is for that neighbor to go ahead and contact the authorities, let the authorities handle it. If it does come to something where they are now violating the bylaws of the HOA, then at that point you may want to go ahead and take it a step further and enforce the lease, because in the lease there should be a clause that says that the tenant is responsible for adhering to the bylaws of the HOA or condo association. So otherwise, you may have some situations where the neighbors may be a little bit more sensitive than they should be. In any case, if the police go out there and just ask the tenant to pipe down a little bit, usually that solves the problem. Also, what you can do is just have the tenant or the neighbor that's reaching out to you about the noise complaint to just ask the tenant to, bring it down a little bit, and usually that also solves the problem. So a lot of times, people are just afraid to communicate with one another. Many times I found that if you just communicate with the tenant and let them know that, hey, this is a complaint, or hey, would you mind bringing it down a little bit, your party's getting a little out of hand, or whatever it may be, a lot of times they adhere. If they don't, let the natural process take its place. If at the end of the day it eventually breaks a lease or a term in your lease, then at that point you would take action as a landlord and make sure they start adhering to it, so it doesn't harm you as a landlord financially in regards to any notices or HOA violations or fines that may be imposed as a result. So those are a few tips, a few answers to some questions that we typically get around this time of year. If you got any other questions or need any help with property management in Houston, Texas, please go to our website, HoustonPropertyManager.com, or give us a call anytime here at our offices.